Wildlife is in free fall, and humans are largely to blame according to this report. Just looking to the Amazon, the big and small are under threat from out-of-control blazes, mostly sparked by loggers and farmers wanting to clear the land for crops or livestock. But the damage is not always intentional. 3 billion animals in Australia have been killed, injured or displaced following last season's wildfires. And human-caused climate change had an impact on that disaster, says researchers.
What we've seen is a wholesale destruction of some of our most important natural assets in the space of one human lifetime in 50 years. And this is a trend that is only increasing and accelerating.
One of the worst hit animals include the gorillas in the Democratic Republic of Congo, who are often hunted, as wildlife trade is another factor driving the decline in 4,000 species. Urgent conservation and changing the way food is produced can slow the trend.
We should be asking questions about where our food has come from. Has it come from an area which is being deforested to reduce it? But also think about food waste. A third of all food that is produced globally is wasted. So what is needed, certainly at European level, is legislation which will help get deforestation out of supply chains. It should be illegal to have deforesting products on our supermarket shelves.
A warning that many species will be driven to extinction if the tide doesn't turn, threatening the integrity of the ecosystems on which we depend. Jackie Fox, RTE News.
Well, we're joined in studio now by someone who has seen a lot of that wildlife up close, Emmy Award-winning wildlife filmmaker Colin Stafford Johnson. Thanks for joining us this evening, Colin.
Thanks for having me.
You've spent a long time documenting wildlife around the world. Have you seen that level of decline yourself over those years?
Very much so, and it's not just actually, in some of those places we've been seeing on the news. We always talk about the rainforest, and I suppose that's where wildlife decline is most obvious. There's places I've been to in Southeast Asia where you could, walk for weeks through, these extraordinary habitats. You go back 10 years later and they cease to exist. And so many of the creatures that live there, they're so dependent. They've got very specific requirements. So when that habitat goes, there's no place for them to go.
But it's not just far-flung places. Sure, it's not. We can see that in Ireland as well.
Absolutely right. I mean, even since I left school, I left school in 1982, and the decline I've seen in so many of the things, often the smaller creatures. But, it's the smaller creatures that rule the world, really. And so many of our insect populations. We hear about bees, but, all these little solitary bees, which have declined by a lot more than 2/3 in that time. If you're a little bee and you're flying around Ireland these days and you go to a modern sort of field, well, you'd be hard-pressed to find something you're hard-pressed to find a wildflower. The intensification of agriculture has changed everything completely.
Now, you've recently made a film about wildlife in Cuba, and that's in the region that's been worst affected, according to the WWF report.
Yeah, well, the whole neotropical belt, from sort of Central America and down to South America has been massively affected, really by deforestation. Also, coral reefs have been destroyed in those areas. They're the sort of two habitats which are probably the most diverse in the world. And again, once those reefs get destroyed and once those forests get cut down, the life disappears very, very quickly. But I think, we have to be careful not to it's very easy to get sort of depressed about these things. And you have to really think about, instead of looking overseas the whole time, I really think we have to look at what we can do positively in this country. There's an awful lot we can do. If we want our rivers to be clean again, that's a choice we can make. If we want more forests, we can plant them. If we need to bring back diversity of our wildflowers, we can do that. So it's not all, decline is not inevitable. It's a choice we make. And I'm quite confident in this country that people are starting to turn the corner. I see people talking in a different way, and I'm feeling pretty positive because I think we have to be.
Well, it's lovely to end on that optimistic note. Colin Stafford Johnson, thanks indeed for joining us this evening.
Thanks for having me.